Hi, greetings fellow classmates and Professor Iona. My name is Freddy Radena and today I'll be sharing with you chapter 2 from the book that I've been reading, The Return of Depression Economics and the Financial Crisis of 2008 by Paul Krugman. This chapter essentially reveals the detriments of the two financial crises that occurred in 1980s and 1994 and how these warnings were ignored by many. So the key players are Mexico, Argentina, and the US. So the timeline are as follows for clarity of my explanation later on. And interestingly, the shape of the chronology of events resembles the letter M. And these are the summary. And we are more interested in point B and point D, as we want to know how and why these two economies, Mexico and Argentina, fumbled the economic growth that they enjoyed in the past. So let's dive in. The first crisis is the 1982 Latin American debt crisis, and for context, the long-term and short-term causes of the Latin American debt crisis. So from 1930s until 1980s, Mexico and Argentina enjoyed a decent level of economic growth due to the import substitution industrialization method, or ISI in short. So this ISI is characterized by high import tariffs, capital control, cheap pesos. And also in 1970s, Mexico discovered oil. So you can sort of imagine how booming Mexico economic growth is. But this growth in Argentina and Mexico was short-lived fairly because of two main reasons. One is overborrowing, and of course, corruption. So these two economies resorted to heavy borrowing to finance their industrialization efforts. Unfortunately, they are unable to meet their financial obligations to the foreign creditors. As such, it triggered the 1982 Latin American debt crisis. So right now we are at point C, which is the Latin American debt crisis, but they eventually managed to go back up in the span of 2 to 3 years for two main reasons. First is the economic policy reform adopted by two countries, and also the financial aid extended by the US via the Brady Plan. So the lessons learned from the 82 debt crisis is that ISI was no longer appropriate for this period of time, and they switched to an export-oriented economy to tap on the benefits of globalization. So this economic model is described by slashing of import tariffs and opening up of their domestic markets to the global markets. And most importantly, they pegged their pesos against the USD. So for instance, the Mexican Central Bank issued short-term public debt instruments called the Teso Bonos, which is dominated in the USD, and the capital gains from selling this Teso Bono is used to purchase pesos in the forex market to maintain the high value of pesos. Likewise, in Argentina, they adopted currency board, which is essentially pegging the peso at a fixed exchange rate of $1, with every peso in circulation backed by $1 of reserves. So let's focus on do keep in mind of these highlighted words, as these highlighted words eventually prove to be a double-edged sword for these two economies. So stay tuned. So as a result, things went back smoothly. They managed to restore foreign investors' confidence, and public debt was significantly is significantly reduced via the Brady Plan and massive capital inflow due to NAFTA, which was proposed by the Mexican government to America and Canada. And this period was characterized by low inflation as well. However, strangely though, despite all this capital inflow, there was low growth, particularly in Mexico, whereby the average growth rate is at 2.8%, and it is outpaced by the population growth. So it is not that stable of a growth. And for Argentina, economic growth is of a high high unemployment. Therefore, it is sort of like a growth depression for Argentina. However, the key negative impact is also the overvaluing of pesos, which will be proven to be the key catalyst for the subsequent crisis, which is the 1994 tequila currency crisis. No, it's not the tequila that you and I might have drunk before, but this is just for fun. So the causes are political instability and effective policy management. So in Mexico, there were violent uprising in 1994, and there was assassination of presidential candidate, which instilled fear amongst foreign investors. As a result, they deemed Mexican assets to be extremely risky, and therefore they placed a super high risk premium on these assets. In addition, there was also policy mismanagement by the Mexican central bank. So many would believe that the peso was significantly overvalued, so they decided to devalue the peso, but it was not low enough, such that it leaves a lot of room for speculators that additional devaluation might happen in the future. And also to restore investors' confidence, Mexican government raised interest rates. However, the consequence is that they will be unable to sell their bonds as a result of high interest rates. Massive capital outflow. As a result, there was massive capital outflow, and foreign investors outrightly pull out their investments from Mexico, which depressed the value of pesos in the foreign exchange market. As a result, the peso collapsed in 1994, leading to triggering the entire 1994 tequila crisis. But this crisis also spread to the entire region, and in particular to the Argentina, which shared a similar growth model as Mexico. So for example, like I mentioned earlier just now, the currency board proved to be a double-edged sword. Many believe that the Argentinian government believed that currency board serves as an immunity to financial crisis, but they were severely mistaken, because they were so greedy and so overcomplacent that they eventually deplete their foreign reserves to finance their foreign debts in USD, and businesses were unable to meet their financial obligations, be it in the domestic market or the local or the global market, and the final consequence is the credit crunch in Argentina. However, fret not, these two countries were rescued again. So for example, in Mexico, there was a ESF extended by the US Treasury with a total of 50 billion line of credit for the Mexican government, as well. Likewise, in Argentina, they were rescued by the World Bank via a $12 billion fund to support local banks and to restructure them to go back to their pre-crisis level. And you guessed it right, the provider of this help was the US. However, various lessons were learned from these two crises, but there were right and wrong lessons that were learned. Let's start with the wrong lessons first. Many believe that well-managed economies are not susceptible to financial crises, leading to greed and overcomplacency. Secondly, injection of funds, shown as the key responses in both two crises, are always the key to solving any financial crisis. And this is how subsequently the US and the IMF and the World Bank thought that they could resolve various crises in the world by injecting funds. However, the right lessons that should have been learned is that stellar past economic performance does not guarantee immunity from financial crisis, and it does not guarantee, it does not reflect future performance. And foreign intervention and reforms should always address the root cause of the problem. If only many took away the right lessons, I believe, or we could at least speculate that the financial crisis could have been mitigated. So in conclusion, what Paul Krugman is trying to teach us is that don't let signs of warning become source of complacency to us, and don't let greed overshadows our judgment. Any solutions should address the root cause of the problem. And personal key takeaway from this is that we should always be rational in our decision making and to avoid any distress for ourselves and for others. And to that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you.